Welcome to Talks with
Bri
and Lucy.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hi. So this month of September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. To get ready for that, we are going to talk about suicide prevention. We're going to go over the
warning signs, risk factors, and how to prevent these and what to do when you actually are in a crisis.
Right. Mm-hmm. For people who have friends or family members who are thinking about suicide, or for people who are having those feelings.
Okay. So before we get into all of that, like our page, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and get all this good knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the warning signs. So some of the warning signs are increased alcohol or drug use, aggressive behavior, impulsive or reckless behavior, and withdrawal from family, friends, or the community. If it gets to the point where they're giving away close belongings to themselves,
if they're they're talking like they're never going to see you again. Things like that.
Or tying up loose ends, making sure debt is paid. That's when it's pretty serious and you should look into seeking help for them. That is considered a psychiatric crisis. So if you need to call 911 or sign up for psychiatric evaluation, that would be the next best step to do.
Also, if they're saying things like, life will be better without me, or I'll be better off dead, things like that. Just listening to people when they speak to you, and don't just take things as a joke, because sometimes they might be joking to you, but they might be really serious.
Really feeling that deep down inside. Yes.
Okay. The risk factors of people who may have these suicidal ideations are people that have had family history of suicide. So if somebody's brother, sister, mother, dad, even grandparents, sometimes it might not be in their genes, but just from experiencing that in their family may cause them to feel like they need to do that. I just recently heard of somebody who their son committed suicide, and so the mother actually committed suicide. So things like that, just situational things. So just watch out for things like that. Also, substance abuse. If, like you said before, if people are taking more drugs, or just usually when people are taking or just abusing some kind of substance, they are doing that to escape. I mean, some people drink occasionally, but if somebody's drinking constantly or doing other drugs where they're always high or drunk, usually they're trying to escape. And so even if they're not suicidal, you still may need to try to help them to get help. Or if you're in that situation, you should get some help too. 1 in 3 people who commit suicide are under the influence of alcohol, which is a very high number for a third of the people. Another risk factor is when somebody who's already feeling that way has access to firearms or weapons. So if you know that somebody is thinking about suicide, if you live with them, then you need to limit their access to the firearms if they're not willing to get help for themselves. Also, having a serious or chronic mental illness can be a risk factor for people. And gender. So women have a higher percentage of attempted suicide, but men actually are 4 times more likely to be successful in their attempts. So that's an interesting fact. But that still means that both men and women commit suicide or attempt to. So it's not either one is going to, it's a possibility that they're going to attempt to commit suicide if they're feeling like that. So yeah, I don't know if that's really a risk factor, because if the person has a history of abuse or trauma, that can, like people dealing with PTSD can, they have these recurring negative thoughts and feelings, and that can wear on them if they're not getting the help that they need. And a lot of people come back here from like wars and stuff and don't get help, and they're dealing with all this emotional trauma. PTSD. And then they end up killing themselves because of that, because they don't know how to deal with it. Also prolonged stress. And stress, I think it's in Japan they have the highest suicide rate, and most of it is because they, like Americans, their work and everything is so stressful, and they don't have time for their families. They're giving up a lot of things for work. And then it causes stress, and then they don't know, you get in this cycle of working, stress, and all this, and you don't know how to get out. And then a lot of people think that the only answer is suicide, and that's not the only answer. You don't have to kill yourself. You can live and get help, and then learn how to either deal with the stress or learn how to not have stress, because that's a possibility too. And the last one is a recent tragedy or loss. So, like I said earlier, the situation with the woman who committed suicide after her son committed suicide, a lot of times, if somebody loses someone that's very close to them, they don't know what to do without that person. So a lot of the times they'll turn to suicide for that too. So those are the things to look for, the warning signs and the risk factors for people who may commit suicide.
Now we're going to talk about support in a crisis. This segment is to help you approach someone who is having a crisis or thinking about committing suicide in a comfortable manner. One of the first things you can do is talk openly and honestly. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask them, do they have a plan? Sometimes they will let you know the plan, whether it's to harm themselves or someone else. If that's the case, hopefully they're able to, confide in you, and you're able to diffuse the situation. The second thing is remove any weapons in the home. Guns, knives, any weapon they can use to hurt themselves or harm anyone else. We don't want to, have those risk factors around in the home if we can help prevent it.
And sometimes it might be difficult to remove things like knives. And you can, and maybe even firearms, depending on the person. But don't put yourself in a situation where you could get harmed. If something happens and you're trying to, and it sounds easy, just take the object out of the house, but sometimes if that person is in a bad mental state, something might trigger them if you're trying to take things out of their house. So just keep that in mind, and if something does happen, then call a therapist, call the police if you need to, but keep yourself safe first.
And it goes to the next point. When you ask them questions, keep them simple and direct. Like I said, ask them, do you need me to call your psychiatrist? Do I need to call 911? Do we need, assistance to help us in this situation? Express your support and concern. like I said, allowing them to feel comfortable, letting them know that you care and you really are concerned about their health, that makes the difference. So that's very important.
Yeah, because sometimes people might be thinking about not or wanting to commit suicide because they don't feel like people care. So maybe, depending on the situation, showing them that you're there for them and you're supporting them may be the thing that they need to turn their mind around.
So that means when you're talking to them, don't argue with them, don't threaten them, don't raise your voice. Like I said, this is a vulnerable moment, so you want to make sure things are as calm as possible so you can work through this situation together. Don't debate whether suicide is the right or wrong thing. Like I said, in their mind, you have to be very sensitive of what mental state they are in, so you don't want to say anything that might trigger them. And if you're nervous, try not to be fidgety or let it be known, because if you're nervous, it'll project on them and it may make things worse.
Yeah, or annoy them, because sometimes when people they get agitated easily, and if you're up walking around and you're acting like you're nervous, then that might also be a trigger to them, that just the agitation and the annoyance might escalate the situation.
So all of these are ways you can approach someone who may be thinking about committing suicide. So you don't have to, feel like, oh, I don't know what to do. These are simple and, basic steps that you can take to help aid someone in this situation.
So if you are in a situation where you are feeling like you want to commit suicide, then there are resources like suicide hotlines, and you can call a number. We'll put a number here.
Okay.
and talk to somebody about how you're feeling. You can also see a therapist or a psychologist or a psychotherapist, somebody. If you're feeling like it's some kind of chemical imbalance, maybe you may need to be on some kind of medication to help you, even just to get it all settled. You may not have to be on the medicine forever.
I would add that calling a suicide hotline can be useful for many things. So I had a friend who had dealt with some type of mental issues. So when it could be about anything, when she felt overwhelmed or it might feel like she had a chemical imbalance and she just needed to talk to somebody, she would just call them. It's not necessarily that she felt like she wanted to cure herself, but just knowing that she had somebody that she can, call, and she didn't want to bother family members, because sometimes they deal with a lot of crisis. So if she feel like she burnt that out for now, she was able to call them, and she was able to calm down. So it really helps. So
yeah, I never thought about doing something like that.
It works. So and they talk to her, and it's all about validating certain thoughts and feelings, and it's just normal. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. So that's it for this week's episode for suicide prevention. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and share it with your friends if you think that it'll be helpful. This is Talks with
Bri
and Lucy.
See you next time.
Bye.